I want to talk to you now about who the people were that I worked with in the early 70s, then 80s and 90s. That was just a progression of it. Um, in the course that I'm creating, I talk more about histories, my history, the history of the United States, the history of New Zealand, blah, blah, blah. But we're asking, our nonprofit is asking another nonprofit if you want to be the initiators or the fire that lights a whole new childbirth trend, or for me, it's a revitalization of what could have been. So I want to talk to you about the families that I worked with. I didn't call them clients. I didn't call them patients. They're just other human beings. I worked with them. We all blink, we all cough, and we can all tighten up our rectum. So when I worked with pregnant families, we knew that universal carried over into 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth one way or another. It's an activity that each person is going to do. And so the families I worked with developed both this concept, but it was the beginning part of this concept, and they also developed birthing better skills. But this short video is only about the development of the concept. So the concept started in the United States in the early 1970s. Concepts are ideas. And in order to push ideas forward into society, you have to have words. And then you take actions. Sometimes there are systems, mostly there aren't. We're sort of asking ICPA to develop, to not develop it, but to take our protocol and activate it. And sometimes there's policies, such as in New Zealand, where the midwives became the lead maternity care. So the concept that we're asking you to pass on to your clients started to form in the early 1970s, and there was a backdrop of a concept that was already there. That concept was a skills-based approach to childbirth, Lamaze and Bradley, and Lamaze was taught in probably every hospital in the United States from the late 50s to the mid-1970s. That concept of Lamaze and Bradley was for low-risk women to use their skills, the breathing, the relaxation, in order to achieve, these are results and goals that concepts want to see, to achieve a natural birth, pain-free labor without medical intervention. So the concept was that low-risk women, if they use those skills, could achieve those three things. So the concept got put into words, which was low-risk women use these skills, they'll achieve these goals, right? So when I started to work with families, that concept didn't embrace the majority of people that I worked with, myself included. I took Lamaze class with my husband, and I'd say the skills worked 50-50. And I was surprised that they didn't work well for my birth, which are short, under 5 hours. But as the instructor told me after the birth, the skills don't work when you're induced. So even though that wasn't a motivator to me, the fact was that was a motivator to other women and men that I worked with, because while the skills worked for some people, they didn't work for many people. And they weren't focused on many people. So the concept that we're telling you began to develop then. So the idea of the concept that we're telling you now is that 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth. That's the concept, right? And the concept is that it's a great idea to become skilled, because having some skills was better than having no skills. And you need to ask people in my generation about this if you haven't, because they still think you're learning skills, and that's not accurate. You're being encouraged to make choices. That's a different concept. So when we started, what I'm saying to you now, 50 years later, was not well formed. It was just an idea, which was huh? Why didn't skills work for all births? Because 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth. And we are doing the activity of birth, whether it's painful or not, whether we have medical interventions or not. So we began to form the concept, which was to be inclusive of everybody. And that's as simple as that. So what we're asking ICPA members to do is to buy into that concept. And we call it now a generational shift in the childbirth conversation, because the childbirth conversation of today was put in place in the 1980s. So we're now 40 years into this idea that you make a birth plan because you know the birth you want, and that you should be given the birth you'd like. And that isn't working. So we believe, and we believed back then when there were no choices, that we just needed to be included in the concept of that day, which was that skills should be for all of us. As simple as that. 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth one way or another. It's an activity. Yes, we should develop skills that are more effective to do the activity no matter what, but the concept is just to become skilled when you're pregnant. Back then, if we had formed this concept as we have now, our only choices would have been Lamaze and Bradley. Then, for a 20-year period, no skills-based method except birthing better was developed, because the new generation that has led to now said skills don't matter. Cows and cats aren't taught to birth. So women don't need to. It's instinctive, it's natural, it's innate. We know how to do it. But that hasn't worked. So we're saying to ICPA members who want to be involved, and yes, the system, idea, words, actions, and system, is to follow the protocol that we know works, which is to say to your clients in your own words, hey, you're pregnant, learn some skills. Here's a handout of, thankfully, a lot of skills-based methods. Choose one or more of them. Let me know which ones you chose. I'll write that in my notes, and then tell me at each session that you have with me what skill you've learned. And then after the birth, just let me know how it worked, or let me know how the skills didn't work, because then we have some idea of the effectiveness and the range of the skills. But you can then ask people, without the skills, even if they were imperfect, how would your birth have been? And having talked to tens and thousands of women and men around the world in 50 years, I can tell you there has been not one who has said to me the skills didn't make a difference. I could have had them or not had them. Every one of the tens and thousands have said any skill was better than none. They weren't perfect, but any skill was better than none. So the concept started in the early 70s to include all of us, because you can repeat after me, that's the word, 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth one way or another. And what's the next word? Every woman has to do the activity of birthing her baby one way or another. So what is the action that families should take? Learn some skills. And you're encouraging them to do that. I'm about to cough. Imagine this, there are 8,000 plus ICPA members. How many pregnant women do each of you see a year? Just multiply that and tell all your clients that they should pass on the concept to their friends and relatives who are pregnant. This is how a new concept grows. We have an idea. 100% of pregnant women are going to give birth, and it's an activity each is going to do. We articulate that in the same way to everybody. Now we have a handout, boom. That may not be applicable in another country in the EU, but it's a handout that can be modified. And yes, collect notes. Do that simple protocol, because then we learn so much more. This is simple. They can tell their friends and families, hey sis, you're pregnant, learn some skills. Here's the handout my chiropractor gave me. Pick one or more. And then they can talk about it. This is how concepts grow. We want to lead the way into a self-learning skilled birthing population. And our New Zealand Trust believes that ICPA is the perfect organization to do it. However, you have to participate. And this Facebook group is for you to pick my brain, ask me any questions that you want, and I'm creating a course for you that will come online at some point.